there is a common fruit that may be helping elderly people rebuild their bones while they sleep, and no one talks about it. A study hidden for years suggests that this discovery could change everything we know about human aging. I am Dr. Ana Esperanza, and today I will reveal why this simple fruit may be the key to a stronger body and what lies behind the silence surrounding it. But beware, what you are about to hear may challenge everything you believe about aging. At 60, many people believe that bones are already condemned to fragility, as if gravity, time, and past mistakes are quietly demanding their price. Every staircase becomes a risk, every stumble a threat. The body that once felt solid now carries invisible cracks, small fractures accumulating day after day until the moment when a sharp snap occurs and a seemingly harmless fall turns into a devastating fracture. But what almost no one tells you is that this fragility is not only the result of age. Hidden forces, nocturnal habits, and buried secrets can accelerate or slow the internal collapse of bones. And it is precisely here that a simple fruit begins to emerge as the central piece of an enigma that has long intrigued silent doctors and forgotten researchers. During the night, while you sleep, processes unfold in the darkness of your body. Cells whisper as they repair, hormones rise and fall like unseen tides, and bones, invisible beneath the skin, are subjected to a cycle of damage and attempted renewal. Science has long known that deep sleep activates regeneration mechanisms, but there are scattered hints, hidden in dusty reports and unpublished studies, that something else may occur if a specific nutrient is present in the blood at that exact moment. It is not the obvious calcium that fills advertisements, nor the expensive pills sold in glossy packages. It is something natural, common, a catalyst hiding in plain sight. Imagine for a moment the unsettling contrast. Elderly men and women from distant cultures with different diets, languages, and lives, yet all sharing one habit in common: the nightly consumption of this fruit. Could it truly be coincidence? Or is it a clue, a thread leading toward a secret that was never meant to be revealed? Accounts speak of unexpected resilience, fractures that healed faster than predicted, recoveries that defied medical expectations, bones that remained surprisingly dense despite age. But what stands out even more than these stories is the silence that surrounds them. If something so simple could make such a difference, why has no university declared it in bold headlines? Why does the supplement industry continue to push expensive capsules while something ordinary sits ignored in markets and kitchens? Bones are not static structures as many imagine. They breathe, they renew, they suffer micro-damage and attempt to rebuild every single day. After 60, this balance tips. Destruction outweighs repair, and the fortress of the skeleton begins to crumble. Yet in this fragile imbalance, the fruit in question seems to act as a trigger. Isolated researchers, working on the margins of recognition, described how compounds within it might activate enzymes tied to collagen production, the very protein that grants bones both flexibility and strength. Others suggested that antioxidants in the fruit protect osteoblasts, the cells that form bone, from the relentless assault of free radicals. What is most disturbing, however, is that these processes seem to ignite not in the light of day, but at night, while the conscious mind sleeps, while the body labors in secret, unseen, and unheard. Have you ever wondered why some elderly people traverse old age almost unscathed, walking firmly into their 70s and 80s, while others collapse with the very first fall? Genetics, yes, plays its role. Lifestyle certainly shapes the path. But can those factors alone explain the striking differences? In hidden corners of the world, in villages far from industry and advertising, there are whispers of elders who retain bone strength long past expectation. There are no luxury clinics there, no expensive therapies, only simple rituals passed quietly through generations, and among them, the quiet, unwavering ritual of consuming this fruit before sleep. But here lies the danger. What appears to be a blessing may also be a curse. Eating the wrong fruit at the wrong time might not heal but harm. It could block mineral absorption, weaken already fragile systems, or burden organs that time has worn thin. That is why so many avoid speaking of it. The line between salvation and disaster is almost invisible, a thread easily crossed without knowing. And it is precisely this razor-thin uncertainty that deepens the mystery, that shrouds the fruit in both reverence and fear. Doctors rarely mention natural alternatives with such potential, and when they do, their words are vague, cautious, as if they feared to step too close to a forbidden border. Because the truth is that admitting something so cheap, so accessible, could rival therapies worth thousands, would shake the foundation of an industry built on frailty. Do you really believe the silence is due only to a lack of evidence? Or is there something greater at work, a deliberate silence, a system built not to inform, but to conceal? Think for a moment of bones not as lifeless scaffolding, but as an ancient wall. Each stone is a layer of your youth, each crack the erosion of time. The wall still stands, but a single overlooked fracture may one day bring it down. Now imagine there exists a key, a natural cement, a quiet repairer, that works in the very hours when you are unaware, when the wall is most vulnerable. That key is not found in synthetic bottles or in the bright lights of laboratories. It is found in a food so ordinary, so overlooked, that you may have passed it countless times without suspicion. Has anyone ever told you about it? Probably not. And here is the most disturbing detail. Those who know do not speak, not out of greed, but out of fear. Fear of ridicule, fear of retaliation, fear of being branded a fraud for daring to voice what threatens to unravel decades of carefully woven narratives. Yet the signs exist, scattered across forgotten journals, hidden in the margins of studies never cited, whispered in anonymous testimonies of patients who claim their bodies changed in inexplicable ways. They exist in communities where elders walk upright into their twilight years, while elsewhere their counterparts crumble. The mystery, then, is not merely biological. It is cultural. It is political. It is economic. The silence is not accidental. And it is exactly this silence that transforms the fruit into something more than food. It becomes a symbol, a forbidden doorway, a question that refuses to disappear. You are about to step further into this shadowed path, where science and taboo intertwine, where every revelation leads not to clarity, but to deeper uncertainty. And remember, what you have heard so far is not the answer. It is only the surface. When we talk about fragile bones, we often reduce the subject to numbers. Millions of fractures each year, thousands of hospital beds filled with the elderly who will never walk the same way again. Charts, statistics, and percentages that strip away the human story. But behind the numbers are lives, real, fragile, often forgotten. One of those lives belonged to a man of 73, living in a modest house in a quiet town. His story, whispered by neighbors and buried in silence, challenges everything we assume about aging. It happened on a rainy evening. The man slipped in his kitchen and fell hard onto the cold tiles. The sound of the impact was sharp, followed by a pain so intense it left him breathless, as if his body had betrayed him all at once. At the hospital, the verdict was swift and merciless, a severe hip fracture. The doctors spoke with practiced detachment, explaining the slow road ahead. Months of immobility, a painful rehabilitation, and even then perhaps a permanent limp. For a man who had spent his life tending his garden and walking the streets of his town, the thought of such dependence was unbearable. The days that followed blurred together. Sterile walls, indifferent nurses, the slow creep of despair. And then a neighbor came to visit, a man of similar age, yet curiously strong, walking without hesitation. He leaned in and whispered words that seemed almost forbidden. Not everything that heals is sold in pharmacies. Sometimes the answer sits on your table, but no one dares to speak of it. Those words clung to him like a riddle. Back at home, limping and exhausted, he couldn't let the thought go. He began to ask questions, carefully, discreetly. Among the elderly in his neighborhood, he discovered a thread, a faint memory of a ritual long practiced and long ignored. Each night, before sleep, they ate a particular fruit, not for taste, not for tradition alone, but for reasons no one could fully explain. And yet, woven through their stories was a pattern: faster healing, fewer fractures, strength that lingered longer than expected. Desperation can make a man bold. He decided to try. At first it felt absurd. What difference could a fruit make when doctors had already sealed his fate? Still, he ate it each night before bed. Weeks passed. The pain, meant to linger for months, began to fade. His steps, predicted to be halting and delayed, returned sooner than anyone expected. And when new X-rays were taken, the doctors frowned in disbelief. The bone showed signs of healing too rapid, too complete. Numbers and probabilities had been defied. Something unseen was at work, but he told no one. He guarded the secret fiercely, afraid of ridicule, afraid of being dismissed as delusional. He let small hints slip in conversations, but always retreated, never revealing too much. Still, whispers travel. Researchers from a nearby university heard fragments of his story and approached him. They asked questions, took notes, collected samples. For a moment it seemed the secret might step into the light, but then, without explanation, the study was abandoned. The notes disappeared. The researchers stopped returning his calls. It was as if someone had drawn a curtain over the entire affair. He returned to his routine, repeating the ritual each night. The results deepened. He walked without pain, bent without fear, lived with a body that seemed to defy his age. Neighbors watched him with quiet astonishment. He should have been dependent on a cane, yet he carried heavy bags of soil for his garden. He should have been cautious on stairs, yet he climbed them steadily, step by step, as though his fall had never happened. Conversations began in hushed tones. People asked questions without really asking. They knew something was different. But the man's silence grew heavier. He feared what it might mean to speak openly. He sensed that his experience was part of something larger, something that brushed against boundaries he could not name. The fruit had become more than food. It was a key to a door he was not sure he wanted to open. And then there were the nights, strange nights. After eating the fruit, as he drifted into sleep, he felt a heat spreading through his bones, a pulsing energy coursing through the very structure of his body. Sometimes he woke, drenched in sweat, his heart pounding as though his body were rebuilding itself from within. He dreamed vividly, visions of walking through endless corridors, walls made of stone, bones echoing with whispers. Placebo or not, the result was undeniable. His body was changing, yet with the changes came unease. Could this be dangerous? Could something so simple also carry a hidden cost? The body always demands balance. The natural world never gives without taking. What would happen if someone consumed too much, too often? Would the strength turn brittle, the healing turn to harm? The unease deepened one evening when he went to purchase more of the fruit. The vendor hesitated. "Not tonight," he said, shifting uncomfortably. "Best not to eat it after a certain hour." Pressed for explanation, the man only laughed nervously, then turned away. Others gave evasive answers, some even pretending not to know what he meant. It was as though there existed unspoken rules, rules he had broken unknowingly. The fruit was no longer just a food. It had become a taboo, a guarded tradition wrapped in layers of silence. He began to notice other elders in the town, those who seemed to walk straighter, recover faster, carry themselves with a strange resilience. They avoided his gaze when he asked questions. They smiled knowingly, but said nothing. The silence itself was confirmation enough, and so he continued, night after night, caught between gratitude and fear. His strength returned, but with it came the creeping sensation that he had crossed an invisible boundary. He could no longer look at the fruit as harmless. It was a door, and once opened, it could not be closed again. The recovery, the vitality, the whispers from his own body, all of it filled him with awe. But in the shadows of his relief, something else stirred. Subtle signs, strange sensations, little things that grew harder to ignore, a tension in his chest, a coldness in his dreams, an unease in his own reflection. And that was when he realized, with a chill that cut deeper than any fracture, the fruit was giving him more than he had asked for. Aging has always been described as a road with no return. Every decade steals something: strength, memory, balance, the simple ease of moving without thought, and above all, it steals the density of the bones, that silent architecture that once held the body upright like a fortress. In time, the fortress crumbles. Bones turn fragile, brittle as glass, breaking not only under falls, but under the sheer weight of life. Yet when stories like the old man's emerge, stories of fractures healed too quickly, of vitality reborn in the night, they disturb this narrative. They whisper of a possibility long dismissed, that the decline of age is not as inevitable as we have been taught to believe. This is where hope and fear collide. Hope, because the idea that something so ordinary could restore strength offers relief to those living on the edge of dependence. Fear, because if it is real, why has it been buried? Why silenced, hidden, ignored? What force could demand such secrecy, unless the truth is far more dangerous than anyone dares admit? For every testimony of resilience, there are also reports that trouble the mind. Elders who consumed the fruit spoke of vivid dreams, of heat pulsing through their bones, of nights filled with strange sensations. Some described insomnia, as if the body was too restless to sleep, as if something inside was working harder than it should. Others spoke of visions, corridors made of stone, walls trembling with whispers, shadows moving behind the veil of consciousness. Whether imagination or reality, the experience was undeniable. The fruit was not only feeding the body, it was awakening something deeper. Doctors, when confronted, retreat into vague phrases. Maintain a balanced diet, they say. There are no miracles. And yet, if this were merely superstition, why do early research notes vanish? Why are promising studies archived without explanation? Why do conversations end abruptly, as if some invisible boundary has been crossed? The silence itself is more revealing than the words. Think of the human body as an ancient machine, rusted with time yet still functioning. Its gears wear down, its wheels creak, its joints stiffen, and yet, with the right drop of oil in the right place, the machine can continue. This fruit seems to act as that drop of oil, but with one chilling peculiarity: it only works at night. Only when consciousness fades and the body enters its most vulnerable state does the repair begin. A hidden hand, working in the shadows, altering destinies quietly, secretly, but nothing comes without a price. What happens when a body repairs more than it should? What happens when bone density grows beyond expectation? Nature does not allow imbalance without consequence. Some whispered accounts speak of elders who, after months of nightly consumption, began to feel strange stiffness, unexplained aches, even sudden shifts in posture, as if the body, over-repaired, no longer knew how to rest. These stories, scattered and silenced, paint a paradox. The very key that restores might also distort. It is in this paradox, remedy or threat, that the fruit takes on its most unsettling shape. For some, it is a gift from nature, a forgotten bridge between humankind and the earth's hidden medicine. For others, it is a forbidden threshold, a dangerous catalyst that opens doors best left closed. And still, the question looms, haunting, unshakable. How much is safe? Where is the line? At what point does help turn into harm? The old man's case was not unique. Other testimonies began to surface. Quietly, always cautiously, women past menopause, who should have been fragile, showed bone density far beyond what science predicted. Men who suffered serious falls stood up weeks earlier than expected. Again and again, one pattern emerged: a nightly ritual, a fruit consumed in silence. And yet, in all these stories, one detail remained constant. None of them overindulged. Not one reported eating more than a small, measured portion. It was as if instinct itself warned them of an invisible boundary. Imagine then the world if this knowledge were unleashed. Hospitals reporting miraculous recoveries, families watching their elders walk freely, climb stairs, live with dignity. The idea is intoxicating, a vision of hope, but so too is the vision of chaos. What would happen to industries built on frailty, on dependence, on endless treatments and pills. How many billions would collapse if a fruit from the marketplace could rival their empire? The silence begins to make sense, not as ignorance, but as strategy. The deeper one digs, the more the past begins to murmur. In forgotten manuscripts, scattered across libraries, are references to foods consumed at night, said to fortify the bones of the old. In tribal legends, there are whispers of elders walking upright until their final breath, sustained by a secret never shared with outsiders. When compared to modern testimonies, the echoes are impossible to ignore, and yet ignored they remain. Meanwhile, millions continue to stumble, fracture, and fade, unaware that an answer may sit unnoticed in their kitchens. Perhaps that is what unsettles most, the simplicity. For decades, the story of aging has been dressed in complexity, sold through expensive treatments and therapies. But what if the truth has always been simple? Too simple. What if the greatest weapon against fragility is not a drug, not a surgery, but a fruit anyone can afford? And yet simplicity itself can be the greatest danger. What if the fruit is not just a gift, but also a test? What if biology has placed a hidden limit, a threshold not meant to be crossed? What happens when we push too far, when we try to bend nature beyond its laws? If bones can heal too quickly, can they also warp? If strength is regained unnaturally, what else might awaken in the body, unseen, uncontrolled? Some testimonies hint at more than bones. They speak of moods shifting unpredictably, of dreams bleeding into waking hours, of memories resurfacing uninvited. If the fruit influences the skeleton, could it also touch the nerves, the mind, the very fabric of who we are? If true, this is not a secret about bones at all. It is a secret about transformation, transformation that might not be ours to command. The tension grows unbearable, because now the story is no longer about age or fragility. It is about unlocking something deeper, hidden within the body itself, something that science has glimpsed but refused to name. Perhaps that is why silence reigns, not because there is nothing to say, but because the truth is too vast, too dangerous, too uncontrollable. Skeptics may call it exaggeration, but why then do these stories repeat across cultures, centuries, continents? Why do they vanish whenever they approach proof? Why do researchers turn away? Why do conversations falter into silence? We are standing at the edge of something immense, a secret balanced between hope and fear, salvation and curse. And as the shadows lengthen, one certainty emerges. A revelation is coming, because there is a hidden limit to this fruit, a limit that once crossed could change everything. Throughout this journey, we have followed fragments of testimony, unsettling silences, and hints hidden between the lines. Now the question that has lingered since the beginning demands an answer. What is the secret behind this common fruit that seems to rebuild bones at night? Why has it been buried so carefully, hidden behind closed doors and whispers? The truth is this: the fruit itself is not magic. It does not create miracles out of nothing. Instead, it amplifies a process that already exists within us. The human body possesses natural mechanisms of bone repair, activated during deep sleep. This fruit, rich in antioxidants, trace minerals, and compounds tied to collagen synthesis, acts as a catalyst. It does not rewrite the laws of biology, it sharpens them. It speeds up what the body is already trying to do. But here lies the danger. If such knowledge were released without restraint, it would spread like wildfire. People would consume it recklessly, chasing promises of eternal youth, and nature never offers gifts without a price. Overconsumption could distort balance, overload kidneys, or weaken other systems forced to compensate. What was meant to heal could, in excess, harm. This is why the studies vanish. This is why the doctors speak in vague phrases, not because the effect is false, but because it is too dangerous to control once unleashed. You may have expected a name, a precise label, a single word that unmasks the mystery. But the revelation is greater than that. Across cultures, across languages, the fruit changes names, changes forms. The true secret is not its identity, but its pattern. Hidden in plain sight are foods that influence the rhythm of aging, not through expense or technology, but through timing, through simplicity. What unsettles the powerful is not the fruit itself, but the idea that aging can be bent by something so ordinary. That is the real taboo. The old man who healed faster than predicted, the women who defied diagnoses, the villages where elders walked upright into their final days, all point to the same truth. The body is not a machine doomed to collapse. It holds reserves of strength dormant until the right signal awakens them. This fruit was merely the signal, the key that turned the lock. If you have listened this far, you already know the revelation was never about the fruit alone. It was about the silence that has trained us to believe we are powerless. Think of the weight of this. How many people accept fragility as inevitable when their bodies still hold the potential for resilience? How many families live in fear of the fall that ends independence, when the answer might lie not in laboratories but in kitchens? And how many billions are made from convincing us that nothing simple can ever save us? That is why this knowledge remains in the shadows. It is not about lack of proof. It is about control, about power, about deciding who gets to age with strength and who does not. Now the choice falls to you. Will you remain silent, or will you break the silence? If this story has stirred something in you, if you refuse to accept the narrative handed down, write these words in the comments. I do not accept the silence. Let it be your voice, your declaration that you will not be blinded by omission. And do not forget to subscribe. What you have heard today is only one piece of a larger puzzle. There are other foods, other habits, other forgotten truths buried in plain sight. Truths that challenge everything you believe about health, aging, and the human body. The silence around this fruit was only the beginning. The real mystery is just starting to unfold.